People used to think that supply and demand is the same as support and resistance. That's not entirely true. A supply is simply a zone where there's large number of currency pair that need to be sold. That means it's a zone where there's large number of sales order that need to be triggered into the market. On the other hand, a demand zone is simply a zone where there's large number of people who are willing to buy the market at a particular level, just because they assume that that level is cheap. You see, it is not entirely the same as support and resistance. I'm going to explain to you how supply and demand works, how to identify supply and demand, and lastly, how to use supply and demand to change your technical analysis. My name is Divine and I'll be right back. Now, for you to understand how supply and demand work, you need to understand the concept behind supply and demand, the types of supply and demand. Now, let's start by explaining the concept of supply and demand. The concept of supply and demand is based on price cycle, and price cycle is simply the various movement or various phase price go through in the market. Now, price go through 4 different price cycle, which are referred to as 1. Distribution phase, 2. Consolidation phase, 3. The expansion phase, and lastly, the retracement phase. We are going to look at these 4 phases one by one. Now, the first phase is referred to as the distribution phase. The distribution phase is the first phase where price makes the actual movement that price wants to make. And now it can be distributing to the upside or distributing to the downside. Now, the consolidation phase is simply a phase where price has been distributing for a long time and then price decides to go into a resting mode by simply being flat and creating equal highs and equal lows. This is referred to as the consolidation phase. Now, the third phase is simply the expansion phase. When price have rested for a long period of time, price tend to break out from that resting phase, that is the consolidation phase, and expand either to the upside or expand to the downside. That expansion often cause or leave a zone, which can be a supply zone or it can be a demand zone. Now, these zones can be redefined or refined into an order block. Now, the last phase is simply the retracement phase. This phase refers to as when price retraces back into or comes back into the expansion phase just to mitigate or touch the order block that was refined. These are the 4 phases of market or price cycle. We're going to look at this one by one in the chart. But before that, let's talk about the types of supply and demand. There are 4 types of supply and demand. 1 is the rally-based rally. 2 is the rally-based drop. 3 is the drop-based drop. And the 4th one is simply the drop-based rally. We are going to be explaining this one by one for you to understand what they do. Now, the first one is simply the rally-based rally. The rally-based rally is simply when price creates a price action that shows the formation of a demand level. Now, when we see this price pattern, we assume that the big institutions are willing to buy from this zone. Now, the big institutions are simply everyone else trading the forex market that is not the retail trader like me and you. It could be the banks, the hedge funds, the big boys and big girls trading the market. You see? Now, the rally-based rally forms when price distributes to the upside, goes into a resting phase, and then expands to the upside, leaving a zone which can be redefined into an order block. Now, the next type of supply and demand is simply the rally-based drop. The rally-based drop is simply a type of supply and demand that occurs when price creates price pattern that shows the formation of a supply zone. Now, this forms when price distributes to the upside, goes into a resting phase, and then expands to the downside. The expansion to the downside often leave a zone which can be refined into an order block. Now, the next type of supply and demand is referred to as drop-based drop. The drop-based drop is simply a type of supply and demand that occurs when price creates a price action pattern that shows the formation of a supply zone. And this forms when price distributes to the downside, goes into a resting phase, and expands to the downside. That expansion often causes or leaves a zone which can be redefined into an order block. The last type of supply and demand is referred to as drop-based rally. This type of supply and demand occurs when price creates price pattern that shows the formation of a demand level. And now this occurs or forms when price distributes to the downside, goes into a resting phase, and expands to the upside. The expansion often causes or leave a demand level where price, which can be redefined to an order block. All these things we explain here, we are going to go to the chart and find them one by one. Without further ado, let's slide into the charts. Before I go on explaining or identifying the types of supply and demand, and as well using it to make an entry, let me remind you or refresh your memory on the concept of supply and demand. Now, the concept of supply and demand is based on price cycle, and there are four phases in price cycle. The first phase is simply the distribution phase. The second phase is the consolidation phase. The third phase is the expansion phase, and the fourth phase is the retracement phase. The distribution phase is simply the phase where price makes the actual move. The consolidation phase is the phase where price goes into a resting mode. The expansion phase is the phase where price break out from the resting mode and create a supply or a demand level. Now the retracement phase is the phase where price goes back into the expansion phase just to continue the distribution phase. So the goal of the retracement phase is to retrace back into the expansion phase and continue the distribution phase. Now, how do we do that on the chart? The first thing you have to do on the chart is to simply identify the trend. When we identify the trend, we will now know if we're looking for a supply level or a demand level. Now, on this chart, USD we're going to try and identify trend and identify the possible supply zone and even forecast what is going to happen for the week, because I cannot backtest or I cannot replay price. So I'm only going to analyze this chart based on what's going to happen ahead. So if you have a pen, you can write down as a signal and check it out if it's going to play out or not. So the first one I have to do first of all, is to identify the trend. And how do I identify the trend? By simply going to the higher time frame, which is daily time frame. Now on daily time frame, we use our trend line to identify the trend. Now if I'm to use my trend line to identify the trend, I'm going to definitely see that the price is in a downtrend. Price is in a downtrend. So what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing that price is in a downtrend. So what I'm going to be looking for is I'm going to be looking for possible supply zone. And now how do I identify this supply? Oh, sorry. And now how do I identify this supply zone?
For me to be able to identify the supply zone, I'm going to only pay attention to this current price action. I cannot replay price just to I cannot replay price on my list on my trading view. So I'm only going to forecast what is going to happen ahead. So I'm going to pay attention to this price action, trying to identify the two type of of supply zone. Now how do I do that? I go to the 1 hour time frame. On the 1 hour time frame, but first I explained to you that we have two type of supply zone, which is the drop base drop, which is refers to as a reversal pattern. I'll have the drop base, the rally base drop, which is the continuation pattern. Let me say it again. We have two type of supply zone, the drop base drop, and as well we have the rally base drop. Now how do I start from here now? I'll try to study this current price action to see if I can be able to identify my rally based drop or my drop based drop. And now for you to be able to identify this type of supply zone, you need to pay attention to where there is large candles that represent our rally. So rally is simply where there's there's, there's an impulsive move, or if there's big candles. Now how do you do that? First of all, you can see here, this is our rally. This is our rally. Then we have the base, which is referred to as our this rally is referred this rally here is referred to as a distribution phase. And now this is our base, which is referred to as the consolidation phase. And now if you watch this expansion, price expanded to the downside out of this our consolidation phase. So this is our expansion here. So what we are seeing here now in this whole price action here is that we are seeing a rally base drop. And rally base drop is simply a type of supply zone. And I explained to you that price have four cycles, which is what? The rally, the base, the drop, the retracement phase, and then the distribution. So what I'm saying here now, I'm seeing that price has given us a reversal pattern and retrace back to our expansion phase. Price expanded out of this place, and then let me remove this ones and see what happened here. price price came back to our expansion phase and dropped down. Now let's analyze forward. For us to analyze forward, now first we have to identify where we have our impulsive move, which I'm seeing here. This is our first distribution phase, and now here is acting as our base. Here is acting as our base. It's acting as our base. And now this our expansion. So we have seen another type of supply zone, which is called the rally base drop, which signifies a continuation pattern. So what you're simply waiting for now is price to come back, is for price to retrace back into our consolidation phase here and continue the downtrend. So for me, this chart is simply going, this setup is simply going to be like this. Going to short from here and then can target this our low here. Our stop loss should be around this place. We can target here as our first take profit, and then the daily trend, which is daily support, will become our target. That means this is how we're going to analyze this chart here. We're going to sell from that particular zone down to here being our first take profit, and here being our final take profit. So this is what this chart or this setup is going to look like to continue the downtrend. Remember, we were first able to identify the trend on the high time frame, seeing that it's the downtrend, and then we went to the 1 hour time frame and identify the various type of supply zone because we're in a downtrend. At first, we're able to identify that we have a rally base drop, which shows a reversal pattern. Secondly, again, we're able to identify a rally base, a drop base. What am I saying? We're able to identify our rally base drop, which shows a continuation pattern. So what we're looking for this week is for price to retrace back into this our consolidation phase and then begin to distribute down to the distribute to the downside. So this is what we'll be looking at for on USD CHF. Let's go to another one like the GBP USD. I like to trade this pair. I'm going to run like this one. We're going to do the same thing. Let me clear the chart. We're going to do the same thing for GBP USD. And now the first thing to do is to identify the trend. Now if you have to identify this trend, now how do we identify this trend? We are seeing here that we are in an uptrend at this zone here, but price broke through the trend, giving us an impression that we are on a downtrend. But what with our trend line saying that we are in a downtrend, but likely like or not, we're on a downtrend. So what I want to pay attention to is the trend which we are seeing, uptrend. Now, what we've been interested in now is what is happening at this price action here. We are going to be interested in what is going on at this price action here. So what do we do? Go to the 1 hour time frame. What the fuck? This thing has stopped. Now on the 1 hour time frame, what we're going to be doing is trying to look for where we had an impulsive move, where we have a consolidation phase, and where we have a consolidation phase. So what do we do? Now with the current price action now, what I can see here is that